Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. He said that fool, you weren't cool. He took a book to your school. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Don't get shocked if you get mocked. It's what you find when you use your mind. Don't you sweat it, look 'em in the eye. Don't regret it, hold your head high. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Try to show some tenderness, even when they're playing chess. You think it's dumb to be smart? But that's the way you make art, so be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart.
Hi, I'm James Ead. Welcome to Change Your Mind. I live in the divided states of America, and we're divided. And how do we become united again? And united does not mean uniform. We don't have to look alike, act alike, dress alike, think alike. But we try to change each other's minds so often, and we never seem to think about changing our own minds. And so I don't think we're taught how to. And this show is dedicated to having my mind changed by various guests that come on the show. And today we're going to talk a little bit about creativity. And from there, who knows where we're going to go. But I've invited Ali Rice to come on. And hi, Ali.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining the show. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while.
Good to see you too.
Rice Design. I'm just looking at this. Okay, so it's Ali Rice, FRSABAHONS. What can you explain that to me before we get started?
The FRSA is that I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and the BA Honours is a Bachelor of Arts Honours degree. And Rice Design is my first baby. So essentially, once I graduated, I spent 12 months trying to get work, and then I set up my own business, and I was supported by the Prince's Trust, who is now King Charles. So yeah.
Well.
And it's been going for 34 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I did not know that about you. I'm overwhelmed and impressed. The Royal Society, it sounds to me like you have to get dressed up to go meet somebody, or to have a party.
The Royal Society now is open to anyone that's got creativity at their heart that are making a positive impact. So it's quite diverse. Essentially, it was much more originally. I think it was much more based on kind of arts businesses or creativity, but now it's anyone that's applying creativity to solve problems. I think so that it's much more diverse than it used to be.
I see. Thank you for explaining that to me. But you brought up the word creativity, and one of the things that I talk about on various shows is that I don't think our educational system is set up to enhance people's creativity. I think it's set up more to enhance their conformity so that they can be similar in their outlooks, similar in their approaches to problem solving. And I think that there are various things that we could do better in terms of developing people's creativity. What do you think about that, especially with the younger people?
Yeah, well, interestingly that Jason and I, my husband and I, used to work together. We ran projects in a national campaign called Creative Partnerships, and it was essentially directed at re-engaging children in primary schools, so under 10 and 11-year-olds and under, that were getting disengaged. And essentially what's happened is that because of the introduction of technology and over visual stimulation, it's really hard to keep children engaged, more so than ever, utilizing the same techniques that teachers always have. And what was interesting about the creative learning projects that we developed is they were basically used to run a creative process. And essentially the other thing that happened is that all of the projects and the programs we ran were all student led. So essentially, even 4 and 5-year-olds like to lead on their projects as opposed to being told what to do. And essentially, it's about facilitating a process. So they're not only part and parcel of the program, but they do their own research. They implement their, so we've done all kinds of projects. Most significantly were animations. When they did their own research, they made their own models. And then that we used Google Earth to bring we did a Seas and Oceans project that was incredible, and these children were on the brink of writing. They made their own animal. They researched where they were from, fascinating facts.
Wow.
And then we Google Earthed from the school around the world, and the children were put into groups depending on in the world where these animals were found, and it's just incredible. And apart from, we didn't do any blood and gore, so predators didn't eat prey, and but otherwise it's incredible. And the thing is, so I've got this theory actually that if we didn't differentiate between work and play, and we kept that playful energy through education, we'd achieve so much more. So and I think that creative process is really incredibly important. So and I think the thing is that one of what happened is most of the children involved didn't even realize they were working.
Exactly. Now, I got to stop you because you pronounce words differently than I do.
Sorry.
And I call you Ali. Yeah, how do I pronounce your name?
Ali.
Okay.
But I like the way you pronounce it too. It's cool.
Ali. And because I heard process when I say process.
Yeah. Process,
but you know, I have experienced what you're talking about when I teach chess in the schools. I used to do it quite a bit, and the kids think they're at recess. They don't know they're learning, and when they're at play, they're just like little sponges soaking up what you're teaching, and they don't realize it, and they don't think of it in terms of that. They think of it as play. And I think that introducing the aspect of play instead of work is very, very important in terms of unleashing people's creative potential. So I'm glad you brought that up. And do you think creativity is something you're born with, or something that can be enhanced? Like when you had a leader in their project, or are some people just naturally going to do that, and others are just going to be more comfortable following? What do you think about nature versus nurture?
It's interesting because I've got 2 children, and I remember their primary age, particularly in reception. So our kids go to school the year that they turn 5. So they go to school. So, the little ones, when they don't turn 5 until the summer, they're at school almost all of the first year when they're still 4 years old. And what's interesting is that even then, there's some children, if they're given a piece of blank paper and they're told to do anything, some children just love it, and others, they're scared, there's real fear. And I don't know whether that's because of their foundation experience at home, and whether, we always read with our children, the first thing that our children did was draw, and I kept every single drawing that they made. So I don't know whether it's that, or whether there's kind of innately some people don't necessarily feel confident in a creative way. So because I think the thing I love about creativity most is you make something from nothing, so it's and you don't need anything but it's either your imagination or a pen and pencil, or if it's me, you don't need very much to enable that creativity to happen. And it can be massively impacting, just a really small sketch, so I think and I think that what's interesting about animation or little images, that it's universal, so you don't need language to understand it. So I think there's a fundamental, and if you look at cultures, there's similar images and certain symbols that are universally have come through culturally, thousands of years ago, that there are images that, that like the sun, or, there's kind of images that if they're not the same, they're very similar,
They're architectural, typical, yes.
Yeah, and dragons, and, that kind of, all those things, that all the things that we experience as in the human condition, everyone's trying to make sense of wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, and you made a good point about you don't know about their foundation, because I think a lot of it can happen so early in life that depending on your environment, you can be encouraged to be creative, or it can be suppressed. And so that's where I think, like, when we get into our classrooms and it's very structured, and that can be very suppressing rather than allowing for this creativity to take place. But so the nature nurture type of thing, that you can see that nurture plays a role very early in life. And if you're
Yeah,
allowed to be creative, I think most people have untapped potential because they've
absolutely.
been suppressed.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree. That's
so
in all kinds of things. Yeah,
yeah, so
like
the type of programs that you were describing earlier are the types of programs that tap into that potential. And what I'll just talk about my experience a little bit. When I came upon someone who was afraid to demonstrate their knowledge in chess or something like that, I had different techniques of trying to bring out their potential. One was asking direct questions, like open questions, they would kind of shut down, but a direct question, and then they would be able to answer it. And then as they became more and more confident that they were answering the questions, then they became more and more confident in general about the activity that we were doing. So
yeah,
I think there's different teaching methods that can be, if they're not universal, they don't apply to everybody, but if they can be tailored to the individual, then they can be
yeah,
more successful in tapping into the innate creativity that I think you and I both agree is there.
yeah, definitely.
And so
And
how do we teach teachers to tap into that potential? I guess that's not really the why I have you on, but it was just occurred to me as a question.
I think what's interesting to know is teachers, because there's a really cool woman that I know that's an entrepreneur, because I won Social Entrepreneur of 2013, and I was selected by Roger James Hamilton, who's a futurist that was chair of the Green School in Bali, and he was based in Bali. And what was interesting, I know it sounds really weird, but what happened is I also was in another entrepreneurs competition 12 months before. And one of the guys, and it was a global competition as well with World Merit, which is an organization that takes students and young people and gives them opportunities to, if you want to go and work with elephants in India, or you want to go and au pair in China, basically this organization was behind it. But the winner got the opportunity to go around the world and meet world leaders. And I was one of the founding ambassadors. But what happened is one of the African guys introduced me to Roger Hamilton through this wealth dynamics, and it was a profiling thing. So essentially, on this profile, there's all kinds of things that you can be, but at the top is a creator. And obviously, as an artist and designer and facilitator, I kind of knew that I was going to be a creator. And essentially, but to cut a long story short, I watched his first video and I was hooked. So I watched all kinds of videos. I set up my own social enterprise, and within a week, I think on LinkedIn, there was a woman that was basically saying that there were tickets to go to an event in Manchester for social enterprises. This was within a week. This is how things work when you suddenly realize you're on the right path. So within a week, I'd applied to get a ticket to this event. And on the Friday, I went up to Manchester, and standing at the door was Roger Hamilton. And within a year, I'd won the Social Entrepreneur of 2013, which was really on the back of the projects that I've been doing, because our projects were so pioneering, and they'd got awards. One of the projects called Flow was awarded at the Natural History Museum and played at the Natural History Museum. And so all of a sudden, when things are really on point and you're so aligned, that there's one thing after the other. And he's continued to be an incredible influence on me, and so has the network that I've found, particularly through 2020. So yeah,
That's fascinating, and also it's consistent with my experience. I call it walking my path, and
yeah,
it doesn't matter if I'm walking my path, if other people are walking theirs, and they're jeering at me that I'm on the wrong path. If I know, the universe will reflect back to me whether or not I'm on the right path, because like these
yeah,
things just happen. Like you're just
they
describing,
do.
there was Hamilton, and that type of thing reinforces you that you're on your right path.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
so,
the other thing, incidentally, as well, when I had one stop on the train station before I got to Manchester, and bizarrely, I drew this image that was in a circle in the station. And when I got to, I don't know why I did it, but when I got to it, the image was the same image that he used to talk about the wealth dynamics, and it was actually an iron on the on the station. They had this kind of pavilion kind of, but it was within the architecture. It was really bizarre.
And do you get freaked out by that, or do you get inspired by that?
No, I'm kind of used to it, because that's what I think that natural intuition and that kind of creative space is kind of the same thing. So I think, in 2020, one of the things that didn't happen with us generally as a family is that what happened, the uncertainty didn't make us scared, but because that's our happy place. I think routine kind of makes an artist scared, but not knowing what's going to happen isn't, that's when things are exciting, I would say. So yeah.
The biggest fear I had was boredom.
Yeah.
Like you said,
I did lots of training. So yeah, I got trained by Roger Hamilton's right hand lady, and I realized how intuitive an artist I was through the training. So it was really mind blowing, and yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, and so when you were talking about, like, the chaos or uncertainty, not being afraid of that, that's music to my ears, because I think that's when you're the most creative. And for me, it was when things were so obvious. What I'm supposed to say is obvious, and I get so bored so easily. Now these are character defects of mine that I'm telling you about, but I think that it's generalized to artists, in particular, because that's where they there's a stereotype that they're not socially gifted, let's say.
Yeah.
That they isolate, or that they associate only with like-minded souls. And part of that, I think, small talk kind of bores me. And
yeah,
I would really like to get into a conversation that's deeper than, isn't the weather cold, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I've been working on is to have patience in that type of conversation, to be more patient, because who knows how it'll go? Who knows where it will develop? And I had a lot of inclination to just leave a situation, or change the subject, or just act out, or something like that, rather than, listen and be calm and relax and just let it go where it goes. And have you ever struggled with anything like that yourself, or is this more a Jim thing?
Because interestingly, that I'm a twin. So when I was growing up, I was quite introverted, and my sister was quite extrovert. And essentially, I was kind of the quiet, smiley one. And she was, we used to be at both ends of a pram. And when people used to come and say hello to us, I used to be really smiley, and she used to scowl at everybody. But I think one of the things that happens if you're quiet is that you observe more. And I think as an artist, the secret to be able to draw and to, to kind of work out how to put things together is to observe and see things, so I think that kind of natural observation. So I think Wordsworth is one of my favorite poets, actually, and he always says that everybody's got the ability, because nature is really important to me. Everyone's got the ability to respond to nature, but lots of people kind of let it go. And so what's really interesting is, since my training in 2020, I know that I can quantum download, so I can meditate and then I just write poetry. And what's bizarre is the poetry comes out just like, it's just fluidly. It's amazing. So yeah,
I'm going to write that down. Quantum download, because I talk with my spiritual advisor about downloads all the time, and I haven't added the word quantum to it, but it's so precise, because it's a little packet of information that is really packed with it. Really packed tightly. And then you can express it.
Well, is that we used to do the flow writing with the training that I did with Catherine. And then what you do, through whatever you write, you choose 3 words and you put it on another piece of paper. And then bizarrely, images come to illustrate the 3 words that you've So it's really bizarre. So even the illustrations I did were intuitively drawn. They weren't things that I preconceived. It was really crazy, but
That,
really crazy good, not crazy
yeah,
bad.
right, right. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating to hear you describe it because many people can do but not articulate. And you're
Yeah.
doing both for me right now and helping me to
Mm.
understand the creative process that you undergo and how the observation is so critical to it. Because I think that's one thing that I spend too much time in my own mind and not enough looking. But I have this ability to connect, and I don't know
Yeah.
where that's innate, and it was never trained on it. But and that includes crows, trees. It includes all sorts of things that most people around me would think is kind of nutty, but
Yeah.
you know, I do it and I know it's real because again, the universe reflects back to me, and
Yeah.
the crows will call to me when I'm out for a walk, and if they get squawky, I'll tell them to be quiet, and if they're quiet, I give them some treats. And so
That's
now we have this little communication going on. But I also think that one of the ways I can center myself every morning, I'm able to center myself by connecting to something beyond me. And
yeah.
whatever that is, connecting to it gives me that quantum download that you were talking about. And I don't
Yeah.
know, I didn't have that phraseology. Wasn't able to articulate it in that way. But then it's a feeling of empowerment also to be able to
Yeah.
do it. And a little bit of confidence. Do you feel that as well when you're in the flow,
Yeah.
you're doing?
Yeah. Because I think one of the things that is quite strange about me actually is I got scared of my own creative power. So essentially, which sounds a bit weird, but I think the thing is it is incredibly powerful. And
Yeah.
if you look at everybody, we actually create our own reality, and we make our own choices, and they determine, so it's kind of, so it does really matter, what choices we make, how we treat people, as even the power of our words and the words that we use, that they've got power, like a spell. Those words, good or bad, have power over people, and they can, it's bad words. If you're a teacher and you say something awful to a student, that could completely ruin their self-confidence and their self-esteem for, forever, or that you could make or break a subject depending on how you behave in your position as a teacher. So, so it's massively powerful. So I think that, our powers, I don't think people realize how incredibly powerful we all are. And I think the society we're in is kind of devised for us to realize, to try and persuade us that we don't have power.
I
But
agree.
we do. And health wise, I honestly believe that the body's got natural healing power, and that we don't, that the pharmaceutical industry, and that's, I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff that that's unnecessary, that that everyone thinks is okay. So we're better to not go to an alternative practitioner, but to take meds, or and that wouldn't be my choice.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the fear of your own power is very, very interesting topic. I could talk about that for an hour easily. But the idea for me now with the people that I work with is empowerment,
Yeah.
because the people that I work with either have been victimized, in which case they are in fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but for me, fear and shame are the lowest vibrations, and I've never made good decisions based on either one of them. And I think that there is a vibration that is, and being around it, you don't have to be exactly in tune with it, but being close to it, it allows you to be calm, cool, relaxed, make good decisions, have good discernment. And if you're too high or too low, then your life gets messy. And I work with people that are low in the sense that they're based out of fear and shame, and how I struggle to empower them to regain their confidence in their own choice, their own choices, because in the past they made poor choices, but the past can form us, it forms us, but it can also inform us if we look at it without judgment and saying, oh, I'm a poor schmuck. because you just say, okay, I can make new choices today. I can
Yeah,
choose to behave differently. And
yeah,
so, I work on this with people complimenting me. I was told that I didn't accept a compliment well, so I worked on it. So now I just say thank you when someone compliments me. And it's
yeah,
so easy, but it was a tool that I did not have, and now I do. And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of that, especially with reinforcing young people or people that have struggled in the past and are have their confidence shot for one reason or another.
yeah,
And we tend to incarcerate, institutionalize, or sometimes, just shun them, and
yeah.
rather than embrace them because they still have all of that potential locked inside of them. And how can we
Exactly.
free them so that they can
Yeah,
be, and just in the capitalist terms, productive members of society again. And in my
yeah,
thinking, healthy human beings living a life of quiet dignity, which is all
yeah,
most of us really want. So,
yeah,
but the tapping into someone's potential because you often have had it beaten out of them one way or
yeah,
another through our school systems, our educational systems, a poor teacher, chastising a child, you know, there's lots of different ways that our environment can suppress this creativity. And how do we go about encouraging it? You have your programs. Um,
yeah.
you know, I do it through writing and I try to reach people that way, but I'm not always sure how many people or how effectively I don't have that immediate feedback. So how do you get
Yeah.
immediate feedback as an artist?
Because one of the things that I do is I run drawing programs.
Mm,
So, and I run because one of the things I think because what's interesting is as I was brought up by a mum that was a teacher, and she went on to be a head teacher and an Ofsted inspector, and for her, education was everything.
hmm
So, and what's really interesting is that when I started working in schools, I was actually going in trying to compensate for the problems that were within the education system because so many children were becoming disengaged.
Yes.
And it was because the education system didn't need reforming, it needed transforming so that it catered for individual children as in a personalized way, so that and I think the problem is that at the moment over in England, sometimes classes, the children go to an outstanding secondary school, and the classes are, as there's 32 pupils in a class, and it's really hard to individualize learning, and and and
It's
do that,
it's really
so,
hard.
and I
Yeah.
think primary schools, I would say, it's easier to connect on a different level because they don't have as much pressure to get through all the stuff, to get through the exams, if you see what I mean.
Right.
So, but I
Sure.
just think that if you actually utilized, because one of the things that we did is that what's interesting, because I've also had meetings with David Putnam's one of our supporters as well. And one of the things that happened is in England, every school in the UK has a whiteboard, but they never train the teachers to use them. And essentially, the whiteboards have incredible capacity to enable them to make creative processes through all of
Yeah.
their, all the topics they cover,
Yeah.
a possibility. So they could do short films, they could do animations, but essentially,
Or even
most
just
teachers,
draw. Yeah.
yeah, or draw it. But I think that they don't necessarily have the technical, a lot of the teachers
Oh,
didn't have
sure.
the technical ability. And ironically, the children probably have more technical
Mhm.
ability than the so I think it's a perfect opportunity to bring children in to kind of run the technical aspects of things because they know how to do
Yes.
it, so
Yeah.
because we need the bridge, we need a bridge between the generations, so there is like common ground, and we can learn from each other, and I think learning is a two-way process. It's not a one-way, and I learn more from my own children and that as I learn more from them than I do from anyone. So it's kind of, and it's fascinating. You rediscover things that you either kind of gave up on, or, you know, when you become a parent, that you know, you get to revisit things and see things in a completely different light, you know, the second time around. So
It's a little
and for me,
do-over.
yeah, you know, for me, you know, for me as a mum, as apart from making sure they were healthy and safe, I wanted them to achieve their dreams. And I spent 10 years working in California. And I think the thing is that people that achieve their dreams never give up on them. And I honestly think that people, and those gifts and talents, I believe, are there for a reason. So, you know, so the fact that my son's gone to film school now, and my daughter got to go to Blackpool and got in the finals when she was only 10 or 11 when she was a dancer, that's massive, you know. So so I think the thing is, and they've achieved dreams when they were little, and they continue to aspire to do other things. So, you know, and that's once you've summited one mountain, then there's another, you know, kind of naturally you progress, don't you? But I don't think there's anything better than seeing somebody achieve what they've worked for, and, you know, what they're kind of predestined to do.
Right.
So it's cool.
And if someone is achieving something, you know, the response that I'm working on for myself is not to be envious, but to be happy for them.
Oh, me too. I don't think there's anything better. My nephews, you know, my eldest nephew got to Oxford, and is just about to finish, and he's incredibly gifted and talented, and you know, and he's always strived to get 100% in it. And he got an interview at Cambridge, but wasn't offered a place, and not being offered a place was his first failure. And, you know, that's crazy, isn't it? And he's such a gifted musician. Honestly, he's incredible. And he'll go far. And my other nephew's training to be a doctor and is at Liverpool University, and he's in his 4th year. And that's not a fun. I wouldn't like to do that. And he works so hard already, you know, and is not even qualified. But that's not an easy thing to, that's not an easy route to take. But he'll be amazing. So, yeah, I just think, this generation just inspire me, you know. I think they're just incredible. You know, the young people that I see give me huge hope for the future.
You know, what we say in my society in the United States right now, we think they're a generation of slackers. I hear that all the time.
Really? Oh no.
Do you hear that in England? Or no? So,
but I think that it depends which young people you're surrounded by, because obviously,
I mean, I see. Like you're describing, like my nieces and nephews, my best friends, daughters and son are fantastic. You know, they're doing great. And I never saw any of this slacker mentality, but it seems to be, and, you know, we always boil things down to the lowest common denominator in the United States. We always try to say, you know, it's worse than it is. But I think there's something self-protective about my generation looking down at another generation. Well, I achieved this. Well, things are a lot more expensive now. You know, it's not so easy to buy a house today than it was when I started.
Exactly. I think one of the things that happens there is the education system has massive gaps, and it lets young people down. And the other thing that happens is, I truly believe that, you know, the foundation stone that children have before they even get to school, the difference between children that can read and, you know, have started trying to write, those that haven't been given any, you know. We worked in a school, because prior to this government coming in, the Labour government was in, and they built loads of new schools. And one of the schools we worked in on one of the projects we did was a brand new school in an area which is called Telford. So it's in the kind of further north than we are. We're in the Cotswolds, so we're in the southwest. And basically what happened,
almost Wales.
Yeah, we're about an hour away from, because Cota's at Cardiff, and he's at the University of South Wales in Cardiff, so it's not a Cardiff uni. But basically what happened with the school is they built the school in an area that was really deprived, and most of the children that live in this area are from single parent families that are all taking drugs. So basically, once these kids can walk, they're given free rein to walk around the estate. And they're not, because and basically the teachers that we saw before we started the project said that they literally had to tame these children, because they were just left to their own devices. And they'd make headway during the week, during Monday to Friday, and then they go home, and then some of that kind of taming would unwind because, and essentially, so I think the thing is that lots of parents and their parents before have been let down by the education system. And there is kind of a deep rooted, there's a massive social class divide here. There's also obviously a financial, thing that goes on as well. And there's also a lack of respect, there's kind of, so I think that the old fashioned values aren't necessarily instilled in everyone. And for me as well, James, because I spent 10 years in the States, I loved the West Coast more than anywhere in the world. And I loved it because they encourage you to express yourself. And in England, I felt very suppressed. And I never really found my voice until I came to the States when I was 21. And me and Jason spent 3 months putting portfolios together for Disney. And we did incredible things. But the one thing that I loved is the fact I got work with an interior designer, and she took me on just because she saw my ability, not because I'd had 3 or 4 years experience. And in England, unless you've had 3 or 4 years of experience, they won't look at you here. So I don't understand where they expect you to get your experience from if you've gone straight from school and gone to degree level.
Right.
So
there's a cognitive disconnect there. You can't have. We won't hire you unless you have experience. Oh, how do I get hired?
Think, that kind of West Coast mentality, and I only know California because I spent so much time there, was just refreshing to me. And I love the fact that a stranger would spend their time talking to you, whereas here, if anyone speaks to you that you don't know, they think you're a bit weird. So it's kind of, but that's for me as well. Connecting is really important. I love communicating. And it feels like I kind of make up for lost time because I was so quiet and so worried about saying the wrong thing. Or, so as a child, I was quite introverted. And there was always this lively, this kind of, the thing is that I was just inhibited and I lost all my inhibitions, and it was so character building. And I basically ran programs in the middle of the wilderness with Girl Scouts and lots of international counselors. So one of my best friends from Moscow, loads of my friends are from the States as well, another one's from Nairobi, and just incredible. And they've stayed lifelong friends since. And I'm working with kids in the wilderness, doing things like creating, because we were away from technology. So we horse packed through Yosemite, we kayaked in the lakes up there because we were in Bear Valley. We made our own kind of theatre productions, and they lit their own fires, cooked their own food, and there were bears and snakes and huge sequoia trees. And so the thing is, then it was really about kind of being independent, not relying on technology, working together. It was amazing. So yeah, and it was an all-girl environment, bizarrely as well. So there was only a maintenance man and a paramedic, and otherwise everyone else were female, which was a bit weird. That wasn't the best thing about it, but it was quite interesting. But it was so, I always call it my renegade years because it just completely transformed my life and my outlook. So yeah.
Well, that goes to the nature nurture thing, that you had it in your nature, but it wasn't until you got the right nurture that it was able to be expressed. And I think that this is we get called softies if we want to nurture someone's talent and allow it to be expressed. Because we're supposed to be hard, and competitive and winner take all kind of attitude. And it's one of the things that, being on the West Coast, because I grew up on the East Coast, and the East Coast is very much different in that sense. And the East Coast tends to be more competitive, and the West Coast more cooperative. And that's a very big generalization because, of course, there's all sorts of people everywhere. But, my experience on the West Coast was much more suited to my nature, which is to try to help those less fortunate become as fortunate as they can be. And I think that the lifelong, I always say that I always get back more than I give. Because when you see someone blossom, that's such a gift that you're giving to not only to them but to yourself as well, to see it happen.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't get that if you're making a computer run faster. You know, it's like
Right.
it's not to put down anybody who's making computers run faster, but there's certain things that I think that we don't value enough, and that's
Yeah.
how self-expression is so important, and nurturing that so that, and rather than suppressing it, is
Yeah.
critical. And but
It's
our society, our school systems are designed for uniformity and conformity, and not
yeah.
to individuality. So
Yeah.
how do we as a society address that? You know, I don't think it's ever too late. You were 21 when it happened to you, you know,
Yeah.
and I've known people older than that that just started painting or just started pottery or just started something. And
Yeah.
one was on the guitar, and I thought, you know, you don't have the uh, manual dexterity that you did when you were young. How could you? But it was the ability to express herself that meant a difference to her. And all of these
Yeah.
things, you know, we tell ourselves we can't, but in most cases we can.
Yeah.
And it's a
Because I think
question of
it's
will or
yeah.
applying yourself. Yeah.
If you believe you can, you can, and if you believe you can't, you know,
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
the drawing class that I do. I give them fundamental basics so they can pretty much draw anything, and it's based on symmetry and having, you know, lines and just seeing where the connections are. So if you draw an animal, it looks about where the joints are. So it's almost like breaking it down to a stick figure first, so you
Uh-huh.
know what's connected with what and how it bends, and then putting the muscles over the top so that you can kind of understand why a dog's leg bends backwards instead of forwards like ours, and why it lies down, you know, the bottom half of its legs flat, you know. So it's kind of, and the fundamental drawing skills that I give are actually skills that we got when we worked with one of the first Disney animators that we met, and we did some workshops with him in Sacramento. But they're incredible. And I think, you know, sometimes the education system, particularly with creativity, don't want you to prescribe things with kids. But then you get to the stage like me, I learned to draw just naturally, but I only ever remember one art teacher that we had for a short time that showed us how to use a pencil to scale if we were doing life drawing. So otherwise I wasn't really shown that much, you know, specifically. I just kind of, it just gradually, you know, because there is an argument to say, you know, the more you do something, the better you get. So I can't remember, my brother-in-law always says something about how if you do something a number of times, it becomes effortless. Do you know what that is? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, I understand that concept, because you know, you don't have to think about it again. And you know, a lot of the things that you know, and I can't draw at all, you know,
really?
but I have attempted it and colored it in, and it's for amusement purposes. It serves. But you know, and it's partly what you were saying earlier is I wasn't very good young at drawing in class and that kind of stuff, and so I just decided I couldn't do it, and I never tried until I was challenged as an adult in one of my it was a yoga kind of session, but it wasn't just about poses and that kind of thing. It was about the yoga philosophy, and
Yeah.
you know, and I said something like, "Oh, I just can't draw," and so I got homework assignment. And it was amazing to me that I could draw much better than I thought I could, and it was more
Yeah.
fun than I thought it would be. And you
Yeah.
know, it's just the self-stifling that I had done because I had this, you know, before my consciousness was fully formed, decided that I couldn't draw. So
Yeah. Because
I
I
didn't try.
actually think, well, one of the interesting things about artists is they are singled out really early on. So for as long as I can remember, I was singled out as a good artist at school, even when I was like 5 or 6. And
Hmm.
when we work in schools, the same thing happens, so that the teachers identify where the artists are. And
Hmm.
that what happens then is the ones that aren't singled out don't think they're very good.
Right.
So it happens quite early on, and my
Yes.
mum used to, you know, is that my mum always talks about when I was very, very little that I saw a slug, and it was a really big slug, and it had just rained, and apparently there were lots of iridescent colours on it because the sun was shining on this.
Uh-huh.
And I showed mum and said, look at that, how beautiful it was. And she said it was the first time, because she wasn't particularly keen on slugs, that was the first time that she'd seen something that she was kind of gave her the heebie-jeebies, that, you know,
Yeah.
she saw the beauty in it. So yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah. And it's also the powers of your observation at work there
Yeah,
too.
definitely.
So
Oh, yeah.
I wondered, because I'm coming to the end of the show, and I have to ask you if there's anything you want to say about creativity in general, that I didn't ask you, didn't prompt you to respond to. Do you have anything that you want the viewers to take away from your experience, your gifts, your life experiences about creativity?
Because one of the quotes that stuck with me in 2020, you know, Deepak Chopra, one
Mhm.
of my favorite quotes that he said was that uncertainty was the most fertile ground for creativity. And I also extend that and say it's the most fertile ground for imagination and innovation as well. And I think the thing is that then that essentially, and I always set out, to be honest, when I got my A-level results, which is our advanced, I got a really disappointing grade in English, and I was predicted an A, and I got an unclassified. So I had to have my mark, and I was gutted. And next to me was my friend that was planning to go and do medicine, and she also got disappointing results. And her mum turned around basically and said, you know, your subjects you do are all artsy, and that, you know, and Marion's doing these real subjects because there's, and you know, one of the things that's really, it's probably completely governed my whole path, to be honest, is that I wanted to prove that arts and creativity was much more about, you know, if you look at Michelangelo and Da Vinci, that it's a real thinking, feeling. You give your whole soul to whatever you know. It's kind of, and it's that there's much more involved, and it's not just a superficial kind of decorative. It can be as well, but you know, and it really is about finding solutions and working together and collaborating, and you know, and everything that anyone's ever created. There's a thing that I found. From imagination is the form. Sorry, is the form of everything that. Is basically an imaginations and that creativity has enabled anything that man's ever made or happened, you know, or produced, or is from the imagination and that creativity. And I think Sir Ken Robinson, if anyone looks at the RSA anime, there's Creativity Matters and Changing the Education Paradigm, are really short animations that are well worth seeing because they're just incredible. And I think the last thing that I'd say is that you know, Einstein, I love his quote that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. And we've created a society that that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Wow.
And the thing is that we all need, you know, we've all got genius and talents. And I think if we had an education system that focused on trying to get young people and you know, children to focus on those gifts and talents and pursue them, we'd just be in a happier place, wouldn't we?
I agree. Yeah. Well, talk about food for thought. Golly, my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this delightful little conversation. You know, and I have to say that it's one of the things where we value things that we like. If we want to get to the moon, that has value, and so if you're a scientist, that's valuable. But if you want to express art, you know, people say, well, how do I monetize that? But it's not about necessarily monetizing it, although, you know, with all the social media now, that's pretty much a lot of what it is. But it's about the self-expression that others can relate to and they feel a connection. And that feeling of connection means that even if you're by yourself, you're never truly alone. And it stays with you. And it helps you if you're facing depression, if you have other types of issues that are going on, you know that someone has been through something that you have been through or felt something like you have feeling. You know, this is very helpful and there's no price that you can put on it. So encouraging the change of our educational systems to value more than the passing of exams in order to go to become eligible to go apply for a job that you can't get because you have no experience. Maybe we can change it around, maybe, if enough of us keep talking about it. But I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to take you backstage now. And you can hang around. We can talk later, or you can just go away. But I'm just going to wrap up the show. Okay, Ali?
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Ali Rice, good job. And I have to tell you a couple of things. One is that I'm going to change the scroll. Change Your Mind is scrolling across the bottom of your screen, but I'm going to change it to info@airu.tv. If you want to be on the show, if you have a topic that you want to talk about, if you think you can change my mind about something, just write to me there and I'll respond. And we'll talk about whether or not it's a subject that others would be interested in. But one thing I want to leave with you is that there's no change without change within. And it's inside ourselves where we begin. It's not our brains. It's not our hearts. It's deep inside where it starts. And remember, every weekend is a new beginning. Thank you.